So are you sick and tired of planting, doing all the work, just to have the deer eat all your food plots before you even get to hunt it? Well, today we're gonna go step by step of how we protect it and stockpile forages through the use of solar. So we're gonna go step by step from what actual tools do you need to accomplish this, roughly even dollars, but going up even the fencing, the ground rods, everything. And then from there we can even go through just a little bit of when to release it and things like that. But keep in tune, keep watching as we go step by step how stockpile forage through solar fencing. First, we gotta go over what do we need actually to solar fence. And there's a couple of different items we have here. And overall, go honestly to your local farm and fleet farm, whatever it might be, your tractor supply store, and a couple things we need. So first and foremost, we're doing solar. So I like to get myself the Zariba 5 mile solar charger. I just feel like I get the better zap out of it than, let's say, like a 1.5 miles. Units run about 135, 150, might even be a little bit more now. But one unit will do realistically an acre all the way up to 2-3 acre plot, and be self-sufficient. The next thing you're gonna do, obviously, we got power. Now we need some wire. So once again, I get some Zariba, but there's different stuff out there. I like to get the poly wire compared to the poly rope. A little finer, deer can't see it. And one step we do sometimes is we'll actually put an interior fence for depth perception to mess with the deer. But overall, we'll start with the poly wire. Kind of rule of thumb is an acre, you're gonna need about 1,000 feet of wire at minimum. So this spool comes at 1320, and really, honestly, that's the only way I'd go. I wouldn't buy a bunch of different ones. But in the case that, let's say you do have to add on wire, got to get yourself some splices. So they're just little tiny metal splices here, 2 nuts on them, and really very, very simple to use. And take one out of the package here, and you can see a couple of them. Right there, just a little bit screw nuts. Put the poly wire in there. I usually wrap it a couple times in there just to make sure it doesn't slip out. But other than that, the next thing we need is obviously we have connectors. So T-posts, usually my go-to, so you can get them once again anywhere, really any tractor supply, fleet farm, things of that nature. But to connect your poly wire, what you're gonna need is some T-post pin locks. And all this is slips on the T-post, and we'll show a little bit, but the wire goes in, little pin slides in, and you're good to go. And last but not least, this is the end of the year kind of stuff, but one thing I always want to make sure I have is a nice spool. And this is for spooling up the end of the year. I've tried using sticks, I've tried to do it by hand. It always turns to a big mess, so make sure to have a spool. So once again, we want to make sure we have our 5 mile charger, some poly wire, some splices, and then obviously a good spool and some T-pins here. And these are the T-pins right here. You can see little pin that goes into this hole right here. So with that, let's get over to the main T-post where we got our ground rods, and we'll show you that process. So the next step of this, we got our fencer essentially up there charging. The day before, typically when I buy these, I leave them out for a day in the sun just to charge the lithium battery that's inside. But once it's all charged, we get it set up on our post. Make sure it's obviously facing south, typically, best sunlight. But now what we need to do is we need a ground rod. Typically it calls for 3. I've usually done 2. So here's our grounding rods. It's 2 in line. Biggest thing to get is make sure that you're able to attach them here. So eventually I'll tighten this down here. Just wanted to show it spins around pretty simply. Wire goes inside, and then from there we tighten down the ground rod. So this is just a copper wire that goes right on up, and you can see right here, I'll take this off. The copper wire goes right and slips right onto this ground post. Everything is pre-marked, as you can see. So very, very simple process, but copper wire, and then obviously a couple grounding rods. If you have a buddy that's a lineman like I do, sometimes you can get a nice copper cable. But anyways, from there, what we want to do now is we'll attach, and you can see here we have our fence. And what we want to do now is we'll hook up the first wire to that, so our poly wire, and we'll start stranding it across this food plot. I typically do 2 strands. Some places do 3, and then like I said, sometimes I also put an interior fence that's non-electric to mess with a little bit of the depth perception. So far so good at this property where the deer have not jumped it, but once they start jumping it, you'll have to add that interior fence. So before I showed you guys the T-pin lock, and I kind of want to go in here. So we have our first one right here, and all this is a little tiny pin that essentially slops right into this hole right here. And really all we're doing is we're taking our wire, and just for simplicity, just make sure that your wire is obviously behind the pole, otherwise it's going to fall out. But all we do is we put our pin, slide it in, and then we do that around this entire food plot. And what I said, what I like to do is I like to do 2 pairs, 2 sets essentially. One on the bottom, one top. First one I would say is roughly around knee high, whereas the second one is more about just on your lower part of your chest. As the beans or whatever you're growing gets taller, I might raise my bottom one, just because what will happen is if your stuff is a little too tall, it can start shortening your fence out. So it's something to obviously keep track of, you know, a couple months after your stuff starting to grow. So now we got the entire string around. You can see the whole poly wire is strapped around. We have 2 strands attached, and to finalize it off, I'm just going to kind of show how I kind of work this. So I always start with my bottom strand, which riskly is going to come from up top from the actual solar unit. So I run my whole bottom strand, I bring it back around, up, and then what I do is I run it right to a splice. So that way, when I want to take this down, all I do is undo that splice, put it back on my spool, wind it up for the winter, and I'm good to go. But now the final step for all this is obviously turning on our unit. Go like this, and you'll see we are good to go. So that's one good thing always to check is, you know, always come back to your solar fencer and make sure that red light is clicking, making the blink, and that's pretty much saying that your circuit is okay, that you're not losing anywhere, your circuit's not broken, you didn't have a short out somewhere. A lot of times I'll come here and they'll be weak, or it won't be going because either a deer ran through it during the rut, or it's because it's been shorting out on plants, it's just not strong enough. So always check it out. And then always remember, if you're going to do any kind of maintenance, tightening it up during the year, shut this off first, as you're going to get yourself shocked. So it does give you a good boost. Not as bad as like a cow wire, but it's definitely there. So any questions about solar fencing, feel free to reach out. Glad to answer, let you know what you know, tools and everything I use, what kind of different accessories you need just to make this work. But all in all, per acre, you're looking right around the starting cost is about $400. But the unit is already 150 of that. So after that, per acre, you're talking $300 to add with T-posts and everything that way. Another way to save money, go into fence lines, find old T-posts, recycle them, using them for this. So anyways, this is how you stockpile forage with solar fencing. You guys have a great day. Any questions, let us know.